Chapter 1. The chant for the first and second declension noun endings. The first declension endings. A, I, a. I, autumn, is, as, is. A, I, a. I, autumn, is, as, is. And the second declension masculine endings. Us, I, o. I, autumn, is, os, is. Us, I, o. I, autumn, is, os, is. Second declension neuter endings. I, o. A, autumn, is, a, is. I, o. A, autumn, is, a, is. And the present tense verb endings. Ost, muss, tis, und. Ost, muss, tis, und. Once more. Ost, muss, tis, und. Ost, muss, tis, und. And the vocabulary for Chapter 1. Bibo, bibere, bibi. Bibo, bibere, bibi. I drink, to drink, I drank. I drink, to drink, I drank. Kuro, kurare, kuravi, kuratum. Kuro, kurare, kurawi, kuratum. I care for, to care for, I cared for, cared for. I care for, to care for, I cared for, cared for. Convoco, convocare, convocavi, convocatum. Convoco, convocare, convocavi, convocatum. I call together, to call together, I call together, call together. I call together, to call together, I call together, called together. Festino, festinare, festinavi, festinatum. Festino, festinare, festinavi, festinatum. I hurry, to hurry, I hurried, hurried. I hurry, to hurry, I hurried, hurried. Porto, portare, portavi, portatum. Porto, portare, portavi, portatum. I carry, to carry, I carried, carried. I carry, to carry, I carried, carried. Saluto, salutare, salutavi, salutatum. Saluto, salutare, salutavi, salutatum. I greet, to greet, I greeted, greeted. I greet, to greet, I greeted, greeted. Colonus, coloni, colonist, farmer. Colonus, coloni, colonist, farmer. Toga, togai, toga, toga. Toga, togai, toga, toga. Fessus, fessa, fessum, tired. Fessus, fessa, fessum, tired. Liber, libera, liberum, free. Liber, libera, liberum, free. Well, salvete or salvete, if you're using the ecclesiastical pronunciation, and welcome to Primer C, our third book in our series of Latin for children. In this primer, you're going to learn some more advanced grammar, and you're also going to have ample opportunities to do even more translation as we follow a group of nautai, or sailors, as they go on a grand adventure throughout the text. So I think you're going to really enjoy Primer C, but we're going to begin first with some review to make sure that what we have learned in the last two primers, primers A and B, are locked in and therefore preparing you to start with the study of some new grammar. So let's start with nouns. You know that nouns name a person, place, or thing. And you know that in your study of Latin there are a couple of different declensions or classifications for nouns. For example, the first and second declensions. You've also learned third declension nouns. And in this book you're also going to learn the last two, a little bit, they're minor in comparison to the first three, but they're called the fourth and fifth declensions. Why do we call nouns declensions? Well, it's a grammatical term. Declension means listing listing a noun with all of its forms. That's declining a noun, and declension is that list. And you can think of it this way. You know that an incline goes up and a decline goes down, so we like to think of it as just listing in a downward list all of the noun and its various forms. So we're going to look at the noun declension endings for the first and second declension. And then we'll also do a brief verb review. So you might recognize these boxes, these patterns, these charts, these tables. Sometimes we call them chants. These are the endings in this first box for the first declension. Our first declension endings are a, I, a, is, as, is. Just note that in the ecclesiastical pronunciation, these would be pronounced a, is, as, is. Well, that's the first declension. Now we have a second declension, masculine endings, and then over on the third box, our second declension, neuter endings. Note that in the first declension, almost all the time, first declension nouns are feminine. So here is our feminine declension, and you see the predominant A that we see in the inflections or endings for the first declension. You see A a lot of different places. In the second declension, which is a masculine declension, we see a lot of U's and O's. So we have the U here. We have these O's dropping in. So just to compare and contrast there. And when we go to the second declension neuter, we also see the U and the O in a lot of places, except that we have this ah dropping in. That should be ah and ah. And no macron there. Okay, so let's just go over our endings. A, I, is, as, is, or a, is, as, is. That's our chant. We'll be reviewing that. And in our chant in the second declension, for the second declension masculine, us, I, o, I, is, os, is. And in the second declension neuter, I, o, a, is, a, is. Learning noun declensions, it's wise to pay attention to the macrons that are present, because if you notice, for example, the macron here in the ablative singular is not present in the nominative singular. So one way to tell that you have a noun that is in the ablative case is when you have a macron over that final A. Note as well that we have two columns, so we have a singular and a plural column for each one. And note as well that we have really rows in each of these charts that tell us what case we have, because nouns also have case. You remember the three characteristics of a noun? Can you tell me what they are? They are G and C. G and C. Gender, number, and case. So going back to our first declension pattern, this is a feminine pattern. That's its gender. Number means singular or plural, because when we're talking about things, nouns, persons, we can talk about there being one thing or two things, one person or two persons, singular or plural. So that's the concept of number. How many do we have? So nouns have gender. They can be masculine, feminine, or neuter. They have number. They can be singular or plural. And finally, they have case. They can be nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, or ablative. And you recall that case tells us what job the noun is performing in a sentence. Nouns do work. Yes, they are employed. They have jobs. So noun jobs are indicated by case. The nominative case, which would be this first row all the way across, tells us that the noun is functioning as either a subject noun, the subject doing the action of a sentence, a predicate nominative when the subject is being renamed, as in John is a teacher. Teacher would be in the nominative case as well, predicate nominative. Predicate adjective as well would be in the nominative case. If we say John is wise, wise is an adjective. It's telling us that the subject, John, is wise, so it would also be in the nominative case. Then we also have the genitive case, which would represent the second row all the way across. And that tells us that communicates possession, or does the job of possession. And we use PNA as the abbreviation for nouns that are showing us possession. possessive noun adjective, as in the book of John. Of John means it's communicating that it belongs to him, possession. It's John's book after all. So John would be in that particular sentence or phrase in the genitive case. Then we have a third noun job or case, which is the dative case, which represents this row. And it tells us that the noun is functioning as an indirect object, as in John gave the book to Susan. Susan would be the indirect object, and it would be in the dative case. Book, however, would be in the accusative case because book would be the direct object. Just to give you a quick review, John gave the book to Susan. Here's our subject noun. Here's our verb. It's a verb transitive because it does have an object. The object, the direct object, is book. He gives the book. This would be in the accusative case because it's functioning as the direct object, in Latin, of course. And Susan here would be in the dative case because it's the indirect object. She is receiving the book, and she is an object of this action of giving as well, but she's not the direct object. She's the indirect object. The book gets the direct object, and then Susan, the indirect object. So she would be in the dative case. And finally, so we've covered the accusative case, it would be this row right here. And the last row is the ablative case. And the ablative case tells us, is used to communicate the object of prepositions. So when we're working with prepositions, we put the nouns in the ablative case a lot of the time. However, neglected to say that the accusative case can also be used for the object of the preposition. Now let's look at a quick example of that. John walked with Susan. Here is a preposition. Those are those little words that connect other words to make complete sense of the sentence. They're connecting words. And John walked with Susan. He would be our subject noun here. He would be our subject noun, and in the nominative case, walked would be our verb. And here we have with Susan. So with is going to be a preposition, and in Latin it happens to be cum, and it takes the ablative, so it would be in the ablative case. I take that back, and I don't mean to say that the preposition's in the ablative case. Susan's going to be in the ablative case because cum takes the ablative. There are other Latin prepositions that will take the accusative. But that sums up the noun jobs that you have learned so far. The case that nouns take, the case forms that they have, will tell you how they're functioning in the sentence. But you know that. And we'll learn some additional ways that nouns can do work in sentences as well throughout Primer C. Well, that'll do it for our first and second noun declensions. Remember, there is a third declension. We'll be reviewing that next week. Remember as well that you want to pay attention to the macrons in these charts. Particularly paying attention to this macron over the ablative and the first declension singular. Note as well that you always have a macron over the genitive singular here and the nominative plural here in the first and in the second declension. Note as well, of course, that you have the neuter rule, which means that the nominative and the accusative in both the singular and plural are always the same. One of those neat little rules. Okay, let's go to verbs. Let's review verbs for a moment. Verbs, like nouns, also have three characteristics. Do you remember them? If nouns have GNC, gender, number, and case, what do verbs have? Well, they have PNT, and PNT stands for person, number, and tense. First of all, verbs have person, which indicate to us who's doing the action. There's a first person, a second person, and a third person. First person always refers to yourself. I walk. And the second person is someone that would be involved with you in direct correspondence. I'm speaking to you. You and I walk. You walk. I walk. So first person would be I walk. Second person would be you walk. Third person would be in reference to someone who's really at a greater distance from us. We would say he, she, or it for the third person. He walks too. He wouldn't be close to us and involved in our conversation, so we call him the third person. Now, in the case of all three of these persons, we can be speaking in terms of them being singular, as in I. I'm one person. But we can also speak of the first person in the plural tense. If someone is with me, we walk. And you can be singular. I'm speaking to you. But if there are several of you, I could also use the word you or you all to refer to a plural group of you. You all walk with me. And if the third person singular is he, she, or it, what would it be in the plural? But they, again, a group of people that are distant from our activity and conversation, they walk. So verbs have person. They also, who's doing the action. They also have number. How many people are doing the action. Note that in this case, number is shared by both nouns and verbs. Just as, let's get that right, just as nouns can be singular or plural, one dog, two dogs, so can verbs be singular or plural, because we can have one or two people or dogs doing the action. Okay, finally, verbs have tense. Tense refers to time. Tense equals time. These endings are our present tense endings. Ost, muss, tis, und. Ost, muss, tis, und. And when we see those particular endings attached to a verb, we know that we are talking about the present tense. When did this action occur? When did this walking occur? It occurred in the present because we have present tense endings. For example, we know that ambulo means I walk because we see this present tense ending. If I wanted to say that you walk, I would have to add the as ending, and if I wanted to say that he, she, or it walks, of course, I would add this t ending. Our stem here being ambula. And then, of course, on the plural will be ambulamus, ambulatis, ambulant. These endings tell us we have the present tense. Okay, that's review for you, but it's good to just make sure those things are locked in and fresh as we go forward in Primer C. I'll see you next time for Chapter 2 when we'll review third declension nouns. I'll see you then.